Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe comics podcast. Now, today we are talking about Duke from the Silent Missions series that is running through April. This came out Wednesday, April the 30th, 2025. But I will not be talking about this on my own. As normal, I will be joined by my regular co-host. It's a real American Tim. It's Tim Finn.
No sound effect because it's silence. Also, Mark and I are going to be doing the entire podcast with our microphones on mute. We'll just be
Okay, good idea.
Gesticulating with hands. There'll be some bug eyes, some looking off, camera left, camera right, and maybe some panels from the comic. What a month it's been. It's unbelievable. You know, in the summer of, was it 1988, G.I. Joe went bi-weekly. There were those two summers, 88 and I think 89, when Marvel 4 or 6 of its top books went bi-weekly for the summer. Uncanny X-Men and Amazing Spider-Man. And one of those summers, G.I. Joe was a part of that. And so you got twice as many G.I. Joe comics that summer. And I'm trying to think, in 88, was that when Yearbook 4 came out? So I don't know, maybe that was the spring. I don't know. But, you know, maybe in the busiest, densest stretches of the IDW continuity, right? Between G.I. Joe Origins and Cobra, or between, you know, G.I. Joe and like Snake Eyes and the Cobra Files and A Real American Hero, which might have been on issue, 205 around then, and something in the Revolution continuity. Maybe there would have been this many comics in a month, but 5 Real American Hero issues in a month by really good talent. Wow. And then if you count the week before and the week after, right? It's 7, right? Hama does an issue. There's a skip month for Larry Hama's numerical Real American Hero. There's these 5 one-shots, including plus a 6th one, a reprint of issue 21 from 1984. And then into May, another issue of Real American Hero written by Hama. And the talent on these wordless books have all been surprising and top-notch. It's what a good time it is to be a G.I. Joe fan.
Fantastic. So let's get into this one a little bit. Here's the blurb for it. They've got some interesting blurbs for these issues as they come out. In the standalone silent issue from Wes Craig, Duke treks through Cobra-infested terrain. Snake-infested terrain. To find his target, a traitor who's joined the enemy. Spoilers! Can Duke do the unthinkable to complete his mission? When the silent missions were conceived, Wes Craig was my first call, said Alex Antone, Editorial Director at Skybound. Not only is he one of the very best storytellers in comics, it turns out he's a massive G.I. Joe fan. His Duke is a love letter to G.I. Joe and a fitting finale to this exciting event. And I think it's a good point that for people of a certain generation, if you're in that magical slice of time, sort of 40s to 50s in terms of your age at the moment, that chances are you will have been exposed to a good chunk of G.I. Joe, and like it or not, it's in the culture, it's in your DNA. And I'm sure there's this bunch of comic creators out there who sort of, read the comics, bought the toys, saw the cartoon as they were growing up, and just haven't had the opportunity to work on the brand for one reason or another. And projects like this are just perfect for giving them a chance to scratch that itch and get out there in the world of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, Wes Craig is the artist of Deadly Class and is the writer-artist of Kaya, Kaya? How do you spell it? How do you say it? Kaya. Kaya.
Yeah.
Another creator-owned monthly series at Image. And
Mhm.
Mark, 2 years ago, we were doing one of our episodes of Talking Joe where we had some guests, and I think we were just musing about what G.I. Joe might be after IDW, a new publisher hadn't been announced, and I don't think we'd gotten even several months within the IDW's final issue. And one of your questions was, just as a discussion, who were some artists who you would want to see G.I. Joe? And I said something like, oh, there are dozens and dozens, and I don't want to name any because, if some of them don't like G.I. Joe, or if some of them are working on G.I. Joe, or some of them aren't allowed to work on G.I. Joe, that might be weird or awkward. And that list really was like 80 people long, and Wes Craig was on it. And, when I was flipping through Deadly Class years ago, colored by Lee Lowridge, who colored the Scarlet miniseries and will color the second G.I. Joe Energon Universe arc, I remember thinking, oh, the color scheme in this book, Deadly Class, is so great. It changes every 3 pages, and it is a limited palette. That might be too artsy for G.I. Joe. Maybe G.I. Joe fans don't want that, but it would be so cool. And then I was reading issue 1 and 2 of Kaya, and sort of thought this all over again. Oh, Wes Craig's art is, it's reduced. It's a little cartoony. It's very much about design and shape, sort of like Mike Mignola, except not as flat. There is a lot more rounded and cartooning to it, but sort of more similar than dissimilar, very graphical. And here it is. Here's a G.I. Joe issue written and drawn by Wes Craig.
Indeed. Here's one of my hardcovers of Deadly Class, complete with Wes Craig sketch in the front. I think the others are up there. But here we go. Just like when Tom Riley started on Duke, the Duke series, and that was announced. At that point in time, the only piece of G.I. Joe art that had been drawn by Tom Riley at that point was for my brother. Wes Craig, the only piece of G.I. Joe art that, as far as I could tell, that he had drawn was in my brother's sketchbook of a Cobra Commander.
Oh, neat.
Lots of nice black, contrasty blacks and whites there. Cobra Commander stood in front of an old-fashioned microphone, giving a rally, finger held aloft. Great sketch.
I'll describe it a little more for people listening. One hand up, pointing a finger while making a point. One hand on his waist, the Cobra logo behind him, a white background behind that, but a thick black outline all around the piece, definitely drawn with a brush pen, and some sort of sketchy squiggly lines on the bottom to indicate, I don't know, the light source or sort of a crowd. And Cobra Commander here is dramatically underlit. There's all this black shadows on the top of his mask, on the top of his jacket, on the tops of his arms. That's great.
Indeed, yeah. If you're listening audio only and you want to see this, just Google Wes Craig, Cobra Commander. It will pop up. So over to the credits. As always, for these silent issues, the credits are a little bit reduced down. We've got writer, penciler Wes Craig, colorist is Jason Wordy, letterer is N.A., with possibly apologies to Pat Brousseau, editor Alex Antone, publication design Gillian Crabb, creative consultant Diana Davis. And I do wonder if there are some fingerprints from Diana on this issue. Maybe we'll find out, and we'll talk about that later. Right, so I guess it's only time to look at what the front of these issues look like.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
Okay. Cover A is drawn by Wes Craig. Is it colored by Wes Craig, or is it also colored by Jason Wordy, Mark?
Ooh, I'm not sure. If you got you don't have the physical copy in front of you at the moment, do you?
Folks, we're recording this before the issue comes out. We're working on PDFs. Yeah, sorry.
So I don't know with 100% confidence, actually.
Well,
What I do know is that whoever updated this drawing after the original solicit also had to update the colouring as well.
Right.
So before you get into how much you love this cover, let's just address the elephant in the room, or the additional finger in the room, which is that when this cover was originally solicited, Duke had an extra finger, an extra appendage on their hands. So he had 4 fingers plus a thumb in the final version, but 5 fingers plus a thumb in the solicit image, which was noticed and corrected for the published cover. And I think in today's environment, I think having extra fingers is a little bit of an extra no-no, just because of the taint of AI and the fact that the AI ends up giving extra fingers and sort of not really being able to cope with drawing hands so well. So because of that being in the air, I think having an extra finger is a bit worse than it would have been maybe a couple of years ago, but because of the hint of the taint of AI in the air. But I don't think that is the case here. I don't think that this image did have any AI involvement. I think it just came down to good old-fashioned drawing an extra finger by accident and it not being caught prior to the solicit. I'll tell you something, Tim, you might like. I did reach out to, when this solicit image came out originally, I reached out to the editor, Alex Antone, just to flag it and make sure that he was aware and give him as long a lead time so they could fix it before they go to print, if they hadn't spotted it already. And he replied to me cheekily, "How do you know that it was an error?" And I went, "Oh, that's interesting. I just assumed it was an error. Oh, maybe this is on me. Maybe this is just a clever plot point. Maybe the comic's about like a bizarro clone twin of Duke, and the extra finger on the cover is a subtle hint that maybe not is all okay." And then they just fixed it, and had the normal 5 fingers.
According to the original Kurt Groen sculpt input sheet for the Toxo Zombie figure, Toxo Zombie figure is missing half its pinky, which does show up in the actual sculpt of the action figure. It's pretty subtle at that point. Maybe this was going to be a plot point involving mutation. There was because of Wizard Magazine, a sort of a widely publicized 6-finger gaffe back in the 90s. Billy Tucci drew a cover of She, which was his creator-owned book about a Japanese warrior. She's got a sword or something, and she's got 6 fingers on a cover, and people sort of giggled at it in Wizard Magazine, and then I think it got fixed. I think it was printed. I don't think it was just a preview. Anyway, okay, so cover A is drawn by Wes Craig and colored by either, we think, Wes Craig or Jason Wordie. This is pretty clever because it is Duke holding a finger to his mouth in the SHHH sound effect, body gesture, language posture. He is head and shoulders. His left arm is up to his mouth, and his right arm is holding a machine gun over his shoulder. The top 2/3 of the cover background is just all white. It's just all been dropped out. But sort of where Duke is based on the color shading on him. His complexion is sort of a gray purple, and his hair is sort of a bluish gray, and then like a dull sort of mustard. And similarly, his shirt, normally a mustard color, is like gray and a gray blue. And so you get the sense that he is he's in the shade, he's in shadows, and it feels like nighttime. These are night colors. And then in terms of black ink, most of the right side of his face, including that mouth, have been spotted in black. So there is a bit of a light source on the top left, but what's really happening is there's just a lot of shadows on the bottom right. And I like this acknowledgement from the cover of the device of the issue. And I'm trying to think, I think the Amazing Spider-Man cover for Marvel's Enough Said stunt back in, what was it, 2002? I can't remember. It was a month of wordless comics from Marvel, and writers and editors could participate if they wanted, but didn't have to. And this was a Kari Andrews cover with Spider-Man, and I think he's holding his hand up to like a bank robber's mouth to sort of keep him from talking. But I can't remember if Spider-Man also has his finger to his mouth to admonish us all to shh. Anyway, fun cover. Interestingly, this is Wes Craig drawing a little bit more realistically, whereas the art on the inside of the book is that slightly more cartooned, more reduced style in sort of detail and in proportions.
And then, as usual, for the cover C, the 1 in 10 incentive, we get the black and white version of that. So it's the cover A and C, and the B and D are kind of grouped together.
Cover B is drawn by Jorge Furnace. Because we don't have the credits in front of us, we're not exactly sure who colored it. But it is a somewhat similar scene. It's Duke waist up in the jungle. There's foliage all around him. The foliage is sort of just 1 or 2 colors of green with a little bit of sort of dark brown green for, tree trunks or maybe like rocks in the distance. He's looking off to the left. He's holding a machine gun, similar machine gun as he's holding in the A cover. Similarly, there are some shadowy shapes on his head, on his shoulders, on his arm to show that the leaves that are higher up than him are casting shadows. But this still feels like, if not nighttime, not a bright sunny day, or that there is so much foliage cover that down at ground level, there are just not any sort of bright yellows of sunlight highlights or, Duke's hair. Similarly, there are shadows on his face, on the right side and under his jaw, and some sort of thick lines and all the brushwork, all the inking for the leaves and for Duke. Neat cover.
Yeah, going by previous credits, I think this one is also covered by the artist as well as just.
And then similarly, the this is D. This is D cover.
D, the 1 in 25 foil letter incentive.
So same image, except now much of the background has been covered up by a red, white, and blue stripe with the letter E of G.I. Joe sort of cut out of it. So Duke and some of his background are sort of peering through this negative space of the letter E that's been sort of cut out. And here the background behind Duke is now monochrome. It's been turned into grayscale. So he's still in color. A little bit of his leg on the bottom is still green, but all the leaves around him are gray. Any retailer incentives, Mark?
As at the time of recording, we are just aware of the Peter Smith combined cover variant, which is running through all 6 issues, because there's a Snake Eyes one as well. So obviously this one features Duke on the front cover, like the other ones that we've seen. It's a pretty much, knee up profile shot of him posing there with a weapon in front of this sort of metallic background of a, an army base or something, sort of making you think a little bit of the cartoon. And here's all of those 6 joined up with Duke all the way on the far right hand side. A pretty consistent set of covers, but not necessarily massively exciting.
Yeah, the sort of difference here is that with these retailer exclusives, Jinx, the one in the middle, she's closer, so she's a little bigger, but they're all effectively sort of composed and cropped about the same way. Their poses are all a little different. Someone's got their arms crossed, someone's holding a big weapon up, someone's holding a smaller weapon up. 2 of the characters have their arms down. But yes, a similar treatment for each one. Character 2 feet in front of a wall that looks like Joe headquarters with some, the wall is metal. Oops. My cat just knocked over a thing. Let me give me a moment to put that back.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay, let's find out what happens on the inside of this one with a
Plot breakdown.
A drone shoots 2 night creepers who are on guard before Duke arrives onto a beach, holding dog tags that once belonged to Amos Silverheels. Making his way into the jungle, Duke has a firefight with a group of Razor Troopers before encountering their leader, Razor Claw. They grapple before falling from a waterfall. Duke stabs the Cobra in his eye, leaving him to shoot blindly in a rage. Duke infiltrates a building that has vats of bubbling green liquid and attaches a bomb with a 3-minute counter. He is interrupted by Razorclaw, and with another tussle, he falls into a vat and disintegrated. That's Razorclaw, not Duke. Duke leaps from the building just as it explodes, exposing him to mind-altering toxins. Duke injects himself with an antidote and then encounters and kills the head scientist. It is his former comrade, Amos Silverheels. Duke grabs some intel as he leaves before depositing the dog tags he had earlier. As he makes his departure and the smoke clears, some Cobra sludge vipers arrive to clean up the mess that he has left behind. There we go.
Mark, were you saying that perhaps a friend of the show and creative consultant on G.I. Joe or Real American Hero for Skybound, Diana Davis, that perhaps her fingerprints are on this issue because of the appearance of three different obscure Cobra characters and one slightly obscure Cobra character?
Right, yeah. I was just trying to do the mental arithmetic. So yeah, we've got an array of Cobra characters here. We have the Night Creeper appearing on the first page. That is taken out by that drone. This character only appears for 2 panels and is killed on the second one. And then there's those as Duke makes his way into the jungle on page just 3 of the story. There's these Razor Troopers that was released as part of the Venom versus Valor line in 2004, and then also Razor Claw, which is kind of the boss of these Razor Troopers, who again is quite an obscure kind of character figure, never really used much in any of the other media outside of that initial Venom versus Valor toy line, and possibly in the cartoon there. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then we've got Sludge Viper on the very last page of the book. So like you say, 4 relatively obscure characters, certainly 3 very obscure Cobra characters. And it's just the kind of thing that Diana has been doing very well on the main ARAH title, where, there's a spot for a character or a trooper to use, and she's been able to suggest a character or a design that maybe hasn't been used so much as one of those go-to kind of character or designs,
and that fits particularly well here. So this is an island base with chemicals and hallucinogens. So Crimson Guard, Cobra Soldier, Cobra Viper, sure, maybe, but Sludge Vipers, yeah, or Toxo Vipers, or Scalpel, Meta Viper. Can you remind us this Cobra Claws and who's the top guy?
The Razor Troopers and Razor Claw is the top guy.
Razor Troopers and Razor Claw. Can you remind us, is there something in their file card and the Valor versus Venom sort of year-long story, which was about sort of splicing DNA from animals into the Cobra characters, right? So that's where we get Venomous Maximus and sort of the idea that sort of Serpentor or Zartan, the things that make them more sci-fi or even animalistic that you might spread that across some other characters. Can you remind us, these Razor Troopers and Cobra Claws, what was their shtick? What did they do?
Yes, so their shtick here was that, like much of this Venom versus Valor era, it was about sort of splicing animals together and sort of tinkering with DNA to do things. And in the file card for both Razor Claw and the Razor Troopers, they talk about wild tiger DNA being spliced in. He's simply unleashed to let his wild tiger DNA part of him take over and stalk and capture his prey. His most potent weapons are his razor-sharp claws. They're retracted and invisible until he attacks, when they spring out instantly to be used with ruthless precision against whatever is in his path.
Is that fingernail claws, or is that those forearm, like elbow claws?
Forearm. They're sort of the way that the figure works is that they're sort of attached kind of at the wrist.
Okay.
With a hinge on them, so they sort of come out. But I guess there's, that's how the toy works. You can probably use your imagination to come up with your own idea as to how it might work in a more fantastical sort of Wolverine type way. It talks about this transformation that he went through. He doesn't remember his name before he went through his transformation. He answers only to Razor Claw. His first impulse after the procedure was to rip apart anything in front of him. Unrestrained anger, low menacing growl. And you kind of see that a hint of that a little bit in the book, that he's maybe more animalistic. There's a close up and it gives a kind of a hint that he's got sort of sharp, triangular kind of teeth.
Yeah. This explains a little better the panel where this character bites Duke in the neck, which we'll get to.
Right, yeah.
One more bit about these Cobra characters that are showing up for the first time or in a long time. Did you say this explicitly? We should spell this out, that the Razor Troopers and Cobra Claws first appearance in G.I. Joe comics? They were not in the Devil's Due. Right.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think they do appear in Devil's Due. They have the Jungle Trooper, which has quite a similar visual to it in green. Okay. Which could again also be an apt character to use here, given it's set in the jungle. I think there's the mask looks quite similar, and that they were used in, I think it was issue 21, Sins of a Mother, in the America's Elite era. Okay. But yeah, I don't recall these actually, other than possibly, small appearances in like a comic insert pack or something along those lines. I don't recall them being used anywhere else. So that it stood out to me as a bit of just a highlight for this particular comic, really, of them just broadening that palette of characters and that have never been used, and they're out there, and there's no real bad characters. It's just how they're used, isn't it? So it's part of, I guess, the delight of the Joe brand, that there's so many characters and designs that you can just pick one and do something with it.
While there are no bad characters, there are action figures that are more beloved or less. And certainly the 2001 and 2 and 3 line had sort of design and sculpting and proportions that some fans didn't love. Some big shoulders and really visible like shoulder pin joints. I think what we're skirting around saying, and what we can say sort of explicitly, is that because G.I. Joe has been around for so long, and there's more than one generation of fans who has followed the toy and the comic, every era is someone's first, every character might be someone's favorite, and we're all rooting to a greater or lesser degree for our favorite character to show up again, to do something important, or just to show up if they've never shown up. And, Larry Hama, I think, based on interviews and convention appearances at this point, kind of famously was not going to include the Cobra Law characters in 1987. That's fine. There are a bunch of characters that showed up in the 2000s in toy form that Hama wasn't going to write because he was barely writing G.I. Joe comics at the time. And then sort of the other embedded thing here is between 82 and 94, Hama had to include new characters and costume designs and vehicles. And in current comics, since 2010, he doesn't have to. So the chances that the Razor Troopers are going to show up in issue 317, A Real American Hero, in 2025 are almost zero. So here's a fun place where, maybe Wes Craig is such a Joe fan, he finds the sort of obscure character, or maybe he says, Diana Davis, who might I use here? Or maybe he has a good idea and she says, I've got a better idea. So fun all around. And then just to put a period at the end of that long sentence, the Sludge Vipers, we probably haven't, there's probably Devil's Due appearance, I can't remember. We haven't seen since the Andrew Wildman run. Are they on a cover around 145? Are they on the cover to 145 by Phil Gozier? Behind Cobra Commander. Anyway, we haven't seen them in a long time. Okay, so let's get into not just character appearances, but story. Okay, in broad strokes, all of these wordless issues beg or suggest for a comparison with other wordless G.I. Joe stories. And there've now been several, right? Issue 21, issue 85, Yearbook 3, 275, Origins 19. But the one everyone thinks of, and the one that most people have read, is 21. And I'm struck that issue 21 of G.I. Joe has one splash page, and it's page 1, which was pretty standard for Marvel books at the time. And Silent Missions Duke has 2 splash pages. Neither of them are page 1. And in a wordless story, and a previous guest said to us that Phil Hester said, wordless stories, you can spend a lot of sort of space and panels just telling sort of necessary or establishing information because you don't have the benefit of word balloons. So to use 1 and even 2 splash pages in this issue is not risky. It's not a big deal, but it's it's like a medium swing because you don't get a half page back when you use a full page.
Yeah, and those 2 splash, you've almost got 2.5 because you've got 2 splash pages. One is the kind of the big reveal of the Cobra base on this island. Then the other one is that sort of moment that Duke is exposed to this toxin and starts kind of having this hallucination. It's that crazy kind of atom bomb effect with Cobra Commander pointing, and then there's also a almost splash of Duke falling down from that waterfall along with Razor Claw as well. We've just got Diana with us, so
cool.
Should we pick up here?
Let's pause our investigation of this issue and ask Diana a couple questions.
Diana, so it's great of you to join us, take a few minutes away from your busy work,
yes,
and talk to us about Silent Missions. So we're just talking about Silent Missions Duke. So for you, here's the lowball question: how exciting is it for you to be working on a Duke solo issue?
Oh, it's pretty exciting. I think it's the second one I worked on because we did that Duke issue for IDW, which wasn't necessarily solo. Roadblock was in it, but this one, it's all Duke, and it's really good. I really loved it.
That one was a regular issue with word balloons and sound effects, but
it wasn't silent
on Duke.
Yeah, but it was an all Duke issue. So
for new listeners, Duke is Diana's favorite character, and Diana
says like right there.
For people who are listening and not watching.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They can't see that.
And Diana specializes in her collection of Duke artwork. Did you make specific suggestions to Wes Craig about some of these deep cut characters? Were there other suggestions? Okay.
Yeah, Alex and I got together and figured out characters and deep cut Cobra guys that sort of fit with what he wanted to do, because originally he had selected a character to use that is no longer living. So by choosing certain other characters, now we could have those guys, the regular troops, and then their commander, and that fit, and that made more sense. And then if you're in a lab that's building, toxic, wasty kind of bad stuff, well, there you go. We have guys who do that, and that all fit together. And it was fun. It was fun.
Were there any other story or art suggestions or continuity catches?
There were a few. I've been working on multiple issues a week for a while, so I can't recall them specifically. But there were a few, but it wasn't like major. It wasn't like a major issue. The story, the basic framework of the story was from the beginning was there and excellent and exciting. It was just a question of getting the characters living and making sure things went okay. And changing a name on slightly on a dog tag
for like copyright clearance.
Yeah,
kind of thing?
just to
So it's not
sometimes
too similar to something else.
Yeah, sometimes it's better to head that off by not like courting the chance of a letter, by just a little shift.
Right. Diana, do you have any personal connection with the Razor Trooper and the Cobra Claws from Valor versus Venom?
Nope. I just looked at them and I thought, well, that fits. They're kind of cool. It's nice to see guys that we haven't really seen in comics before. And they were just a perfect fit for exactly what the writer wanted to do. And that's kind of one of the things I do when people can't, like, which this doesn't work, so who will work? And then those guys slotted in without any major problem. It worked so well. So, and everybody liked the way they looked. So that was perfect.
And we were talking about the covers earlier on with the now infamous extra finger. Was there just a collective slap on the forehead from everyone once you all spotted it simultaneously?
Yeah, I believe one message got sent from my direction saying, "Hey, look, count his fingers," and we all went, "How did that get so far?" And then we fixed it. See, that worked well. But sometimes it takes a while for everything to filter down to everyone, so that at times that can not necessarily get everywhere all at once.
If I may, I can imagine an editor who's requesting a change from a penciler or an inker or a color artist or all of them. If someone has moved on to a next project, maybe they can send in that art fix, not the same day, not the next day, but a week later, and it's still going to make deadline, and the printed book is still going to be fine. And meanwhile, there are all these websites, or maybe even printed catalogs with the earlier version. And I don't find this embarrassing at all. I think it got fixed in time for print, and so it's no big deal. And it's like, yes, it's silly, but not the first time it's happened in comics, and because it got fixed, it's sort of no bigger deal than a typo,
Yeah, and the speed at which he fixed it. I mean, it was fixed in a way that makes me, the AI thing has come up, and even earlier this morning it came up, and I don't believe it is, because with AIs. Yes, with AI, you can go in maybe and try and Photoshop it, but that's not as easy a process as you would think. And that would take some time. And this was a fix that was kind of the speed of, going onto your computer and going there and going like this a couple of times with your pen on your pad and getting that taken care of. I mean, I think there are some Renaissance paintings where people have slightly too many fingers or weird hands. So it's human when you're working on, artists like anyone else on the team are usually working on multiple projects at a time and have tight deadlines, and that's just to make ends meet. So, it gets hectic and things slip through, and it's kind of a funny story. It got by all of us because, sometimes you're looking at a hand and you look at one part and you're like, oh, that looks cool. And then you look at the other part and you went, oh, okay. So yeah, but it was funny. It was caught, it still is kind of funny. And
I wonder if this is a digital fix and the original artwork is still the original version, or if this was an ink patch.
I don't know if he drew digitally or not. I mean,
oh, okay. In the first place,
I don't know. I'm assuming it was, from looking at it. It was he. Some people draw on a Wacom, however you pronounce that, or a pad, and they do their work there. A lot of artists do work digitally. Some people scan it in and then they do their inking, but all pages and covers are scanned in eventually. So I would assume if he wanted to make the fix, the fastest way would to be do it digitally rather than redraw it and scan it in again. Mm-hmm. So there may be a 6-fingered Duke out there. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can buy it.
That's not a deal breaker for you.
No. Are you kidding? That's even better. That's like a super one of a kind piece of the story.
Okay.
And I've heard of a 5-finger discount. Maybe you can get a 6-finger discount. Yeah, just a little
extra finger in there.
Diana, now that we're at the end of 5 weeks of weekly wordless G.I. Joe issues and 6 weeks of G.I. Joe issues, if we're counting March's regular issue, congratulations on a hectic schedule and getting out all these books. It's cool to have so many G.I. Joe comics. It's cool to have so many great G.I. Joe comics.
Yeah, I think it was a really cool thing to do, to have freaking all these books in 1 month. That's better than bi-monthly. That's incredible. And it went together pretty well. Everyone worked their asses off, and all of the stories are fantastic.
There are 4 months a year where there is a 5th Wednesday. And while I would not at all recommend that this happen 4 times a year, because that really is unreasonable, as much as I want like weekly G.I. Joe, I do think a year from now or a year and a half from now, this should totally happen again. So there's my votes. And I can't grab my wallet because there's a cat in my lap. But here's that GIF. Here's that GIF. Yeah. From Futurama. Take my money.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. Now that we're at the end of this amazing month of filled with G.I. Joe, across the 5 extra issues that we've seen, is there any particular highlights or moments or pieces that you were able to kind of feed into that process that you're particularly proud of or were highlights?
Again, I'm the smallest cog in the overall machine. So I think what I'm proudest of is seeing that it sort of reminds me of my art collection, right? So this is 5 different writers and or artists, depending upon who you're talking about, and their take on the brand. So it's kind of cool to see who they chose or who they were working with, the story they came up with that they felt best represented the character, and the art. The art team, either the writer was the artist or the other artist coming on. That's kind of cool. I mean, you see G.I. Joe in there, but you also see a lot of who it is who's creating that comic. And so I think I'm kind of proudest of that they're doing something like that, where we get to see all these different takes on a beloved brand from all these different people and the great stuff they came up with.
That's great.
One thing, I'll just interesting continuity or across ARAH, because this is branded as ARAH, but we do think of ARAH as being the Harmoniverse, and these are sort of distinct creative voices, sort of with a continuity that sitting alongside ARAH, sort of not necessarily having to create things from existing lore or create a big enough change that it needs to feed back into the rest of the book. But one interesting element was in the Spirit book that they that you guys use Revanche as one of the antagonists there. So that was interesting to have that piece of the regular ARAH continuity showing up elsewhere. Is that where did the idea of using Revanche in Spirit come from?
It sort of came in. I don't think the Spirit book started out as a Spirit book, And then we had these, technological robo animal characters. And so that fit in perfectly. So when we thought, well, they need to look at a logo, what logo should we have? That's an easy answer. I mean, there's a company right there who fits in. So it wasn't a hard decision, and it almost wasn't a decision. It was just sort of natural that, of course, that's where that fits.
So it's a case of them Leonardo Romero coming up with the story, having these robotic creatures, and then the team going, well, if you're going to do that, may as well be revenge.
Right. I mean,
is that fair enough?
It's pretty good. That's pretty close to what it was like. Yeah. Yeah. And it would be weird if it wasn't them. Like, how many technological robo cyborg creating bad guys are going to pop up? Well, it could be Cobra, it could be Revanche, but chances are, if it's Cobra these days, it's going to be either Revanche or Mars. And, right now in the mainline book, even though these sort of don't fit in a specific point in time, Destro's not really into that kind of thing. He's got other stuff on his mind. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're there, use them.
And in my reading of Spirit, am I right in thinking that is a sort of a robotic cyber armor thing with a bear inside? Is that the correct interpretation?
I cannot tell you that. I don't myself. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. I think enough wiggle room there. You can leave it almost up to interpretation as to quite exactly what the thing is.
Poor bears. But yeah, haven't we done enough to bears?
Yeah, well, grin and bear it, I guess.
I'm out of questions for our special guest, Diana. Do you want to get back into the meat of the Duke issue?
Yeah, thank you so much for popping by, Diana, and giving us your little tidbits of insight as to your experience on working on these issues, and particularly Duke.
Hooray! Okay.
Back to the little trees.
There's over 300 of them, so there's a lot to do. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks, Diana.
Now back to G.I. Joe.
Okay, so Duke. I found this to be a really well-drawn and really well-colored issue. I love the fight choreography, and I love the plot. I was a little confused. I found 2 or so plot points were not as clear as they could be. And I find that the page at the end where Duke looks at the headlines in the office meant that the story was relying on words, on text too much to sort of follow the full device of a wordless silent issue. Now, you can interpret, silence differently. Everyone says silent interlude and silent issue and silent issue and silent missions. And I think people sort of default to that meaning dialogue and sound effects. And there is text in the original issue 21 in silent interlude when Destro looks at the screen. But correct me if I'm wrong here, Mark. The 1 or 2 times that Destro looks at his screen, no, it says something like probability that intruder will actually land on the castle very small. And that is enhancing what is already clear from the visual storytelling, that Snake Eyes jumping out of his C-130 and trying to land on the very tippy top of a castle is risky. And the difference is with this scene on page 17 of Silent Missions Duke, is that Duke comes into this office, and I feel like Wes Craig has kind of run out of space and has to explain a bunch of things in 3 or 4 panels. And I wish that had been told visually without words in other flashback panels or in different props and pantomime when Silver Heels does come into the office. So that's a weak point for me at the end of the issue. And then going back to page 9, Duke has come out of the water after the waterfall bit, and he pulls something out of his bag, and it's a thing, and there's like 2 rubber bands or, like strings around it. And I don't know what that is, and I don't know if I'm supposed to know what it is. And then later on page 11, there are 3 panels of a thing on a wall with a red light on it. It looks like a little box. Maybe it's like a little phone. Maybe it's a bomb. Maybe it's just like a control panel with some buttons. And we see 3 of them. And the first 2 look like they sort of attach separately to the wall or the drum or the generator or whatever they've been stuck to. And then the third one, it looks like it's like fully a part of it. Like there's no black line separating it. And then in the 4th panel on this page, page 11, Duke has his hand on one. And I think he's planting this. I think it's a bomb because I've seen this convention in so many movies and comics. But I'm not actually sure if Duke put those other 3 there in the 3 previous panels. And so here's this other place where I find the storytelling could be clearer. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm sort of wondering, and I'll ask you, Mark, aloud, this thing that's got the red on it on page 11, is that the thing from page 9? Or were there like 4 or 6 of them like rubber banded together on page 9? And they've got green lights there because he hasn't like set the bombs, like started the countdown.
Yeah, I think you're right. These are the bombs that as you say, were rubber banded together in his rucksack, and now he's planting them. Yeah, I confess, when I first flicked through this, I just thought there was a single bomb, but as you sort of say, it looks like it's being planted in multiple places on this facility.
Okay, so, and then here's another question that I have. On page 10, the big splash page, which I love. I love the composition. I love how small Duke is, how clear he is in the sort of like clearing between the rock and the trees. And there's this downhill that's just done with silhouette. And then in the distance, you get a sense of scale, this giant Cobra industrial plant with several different buildings. And then sort of the icing on the cake is the color choice that all of these lights all over this space are red, which just makes it strange or dangerous or otherworldly. They're not normal yellow lights, right? But this isn't red alert. This is just sort of, this place is weird and dangerous. Okay. Duke does not have a bag here on page 10. Duke did have a bag on page 9. Duke has a bag on page... Well, there's a strap on page 11, and then he does have a bag on page 12. So is there like a missing ink line on page 10, the splash page, where we're seeing the factory and Duke's in the foreground? Do I just need like a diagonal line across his torso to show that he's got this rucksack and it's, in front of him and I can't see it?
Yeah, I think you're right on that splash. There's probably just the missing line of that. Yeah, of that coming across his back, because it does sort of subsequently appear on just the next page turn as he's looking out of the window at the approaching cobras. That bag is back on his back. But, the no prize could be that he's put it down on the ground. It's in front of him. It's obscured.
Right.
So it's not on his back at that point in time. And then he does put it back on his back later. But it's not helpful.
So going back to the waterfall, where was this rucksack? Because I feel like the bottom panel of page 8. Okay, page 8. I feel like the bottom 3 panels where Duke's come out of the water and then he has to fight one more time. I feel like somewhere in there he should like see the bag. He should see the rucksack. Or he should just be holding it. Like it also went over the falls with him, even though I don't think we've seen it in a couple pages or maybe ever. So like, yes, you can explain away that this prop is like nearby, but I feel like it's not a main character. Duke's a main character, right? Like his machine gun is like a supporting character prop and his knife is a supporting character prop. These bombs are pretty important supporting character props. And similarly, the bag, that the rucksack that has them. And I feel like Wes Craig has either lost track of them or I don't think this next one actually happened, but like sort of invented them halfway through the story. And it's like, no, where were they?
Yeah, I wonder if that panel that confused you just before the Razor Claw jumps and attacks him as he's sort of kneeling, holding something. I wonder if that is like maybe a drone has dropped a package for him and he's picking it up. I can't really tell what that panel is doing and what he's holding.
Page 5. Okay. Yes, this was another note I had. Page 5, panel 3. What's he holding? What's he doing? So Duke is kneeling on something that's silhouetted out. I don't think it's a rock. I don't think it's like a little formation of bricks, but it's much bigger than like a rucksack. It's not a person. And he's holding two stringy things. And for a second I thought, oh, he's burying his parachute. Like, no. There wasn't a parachute. He came in underwater. Is he holding the dog tags? Like, no, the scale's all wrong. They're much smaller than that. The little dog tag chains are much smaller than that. And this here has some sort of blue fill. It's like he's holding two things, one in each hand, and then there's some sort of cords or ropes. And I can't follow what he's doing in that panel.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Wes Craig draws so well. His poses have so much energy. I love the like reduced, slight cartooning. Like there's detail, but he's not, like a super Jim Lee detailed artist. But I think as a wordless issue, this is mostly successful. But this is not a home run out of the park. And this was what I thought might happen when this month was announced. And I don't know if I said it to you while we were recording or not, but like the comparison with the original silent interlude, that's tough, because not only was that issue great, its sort of fame and import has grown as it's been reprinted over and over, and people blog about it, and people who like don't really follow G.I. Joe know about it. And I'm crossing my fingers right now, listeners. What I was hoping would happen when these comics came out is that the stories would all be simple enough that there wouldn't be any like, wait, where did this character go? Or like, wait, what's that thing they're holding? I haven't seen that before. Or that if the stories were complex, that the writers and artists were like up to the task of the visual storytelling. And there are 2 or 3 beats here where in broad strokes, I totally get it. Duke gets to this island, takes out the guy and he leaves. But there are some specifics I don't.
Yeah. And I think sort of as a comparison, particularly again to the original silent interlude and some of Hammer's subsequent work, is that he really focuses on keeping track of gear. So for him, it's like, he's got a gun, he's got a knife, he's got a bandolier, he's got this backpack, he's got and so for us as the readers, that bit of where did this thing come from? Where did this go? What is that thing?
Yeah.
It's that's probably just the only real weak point in this particular issue for me.
So the thing that, going back to that comparison of text, the headlines at the end of this issue and the on-screen text that Destro sees in the original silent interlude, that on-screen text in the original issue 21, did I say this already? Enhances what you already know. Whereas I feel like, and if you took out the lettering in those 2 panels, you could still follow it. Whereas here, I feel like when Duke reads the headline, when Duke sees the headlines and Wes Craig writes out the headlines for us, I feel like the story wouldn't resolve if you like X'd out that text. Okay, let's move on to some things that are awesome and that I like. Mark, I'm very happy to say, and I'm looking at page 6 and also 7 and 8. I'm very happy to say that this issue by Wes Craig follows fiction's first law of waterfalls, which is that if you show a waterfall, someone goes over the waterfall, right? Similarly, fiction's first law of gasoline trucks, right? if someone's driving and you see a gasoline tanker like an 18-wheeler, it's gotta blow. And if it doesn't, I'm going to be disappointed. The trick now is to do it like in an unexpected way and in a moment that you weren't expecting it, because so many movies have built up to when you know it's going to happen.
And what about fiction's first rule of seeing a vat of bubbling green sludge or acid?
Are you looking at my notes? Oh no, actually no. That is a joke, because on page 11 I wrote, I hope this follows fiction's first rule of bombs with timers, which is that if someone plants a bomb with a timer, it has to go off unless diffusing the bomb is like key to saving the world and characters not dying, in which case you need to stop the timer and edit the scene with enough tension that you're down to like the last second, or it's like, oh, tell us the code.
And if it does go off and the hero is near, they are just far away enough that it blows up in the background and they fly through the air but are basically unscathed, whereas the baddies just a few feet behind them are utterly decimated.
Going back to fiction's first law of toxic vats, yes, I am pleased to say that they go over the catwalk. The bad guy goes in, Duke does not. I do like that choreography. I do the actual panel where Cobra Claus has gone over and he hasn't fallen in yet. It's 2 panels before he splashes in, because there's also a countdown panel. And there are 3 Dukes in this panel where he's swinging over the catwalk, and now he's like swinging under and past, and now he's like landed on the ground or a lower catwalk. And pretty clear, maybe could be a little clearer. It's sort of the open space of Duke's shirt getting colored yellow and Duke's yellow hair is like doing a lot of work here.
I think that we also see another baddie as well, because there's these baddies that are coming in that he spots through the window, and they're shooting at him from that catwalk down below, and he's using his Captain America shield to block the bullets.
Who are these? Who are these? Is this Holocaust from the Age of Apocalypse? Who I think was renamed sort of Nemesis for the toy line. Sorry.
They're in purple, and they've got what seems to be like quite a bright, Acme playing cards, acid green coloured helmets, possibly with see-through, but I'm not.
Are these Toxo
but
Vipers?
Not with a lot of detail.
Are these
I think that they might
Toxo Viper ones.
I think they might be the Toxo Viper 1, because they're obviously purple and they've got these quite bulbous helmets, which aren't green necessarily. Oh, they are on the file cards. They are more green.
Viper helmets are like red and brown and turquoise and yellow. Plus, they've got black tubes. I drew one once, and you never forget that crazy color scheme.
They've got their helmet of many colors, but on the file cards they look more green than not. So my guess it's a Toxo Viper, but if you have other theories, do opine in on the comments and correct us.
On this same page, the actual page 14,
like 14ish, yeah.
Where Cobra Claus goes into the vat and the countdown goes from 16 to 9 to 2. Duke grabs a circular metal thing, which Mark just joked is a Captain America shield, and uses it to shield himself from these machine gun blasts coming from these, we think, Toxo Vipers from that higher up catwalk. That's a nice bit of choreography, great poses. What is that thing and where did he get it? Because there's a panel of him grabbing it, but it's a close-up. It's just sort of from elbow to hands, and he's grabbed this thing, and it sort of looks like a manhole cover for a sewer. Maybe it's the cover of a very, very small vat. Like, was it hanging on the wall? Was it sitting on a table? I think on this page where he grabs it, and we see it in 4 panels. 1, 2, 3, 4. Panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Panel 10 is the second one where we see it, where he's running and he's holding it above his head and he's deflecting some shots. There are some kind of round things behind him, like under that stairwell, which looks sort of like those like big venting pipes that you see on like ships or buildings. Maybe it's a cover one of those. So here's another case where I think Wes Craig needed another page or to simplify the number of props. And, Mark makes a good point a minute ago about sort of keeping track of all these props or just sort of introducing a certain number of props. And, if you think back to the original silent interlude, Storm Shadow has his sword, Snake Eyes has his Uzi. Those 3 red ninjas each have a different weapon. There are a lot of props, but each character just has one. And Duke here has, 5 to 10, depending on if you count bombs as 1 prop or 6 bombs as 6 props.
Someone left the cover to the Oubliette dungeon from Silent Interlude in this lab, and Duke has grabbed it as he's gone.
From Destro's Castle back in 1984, which we've seen again a few times since then. We saw it in at the end of 138 when it transforms and a giant alien lands next to it. I own that page. Yeah, that's really funny. That if we ever talk to Wes Craig, maybe we can ask him if this is a little homage to the thing that Storm Shadow uses to seal in Scarlet in her little dungeon jail cell.
Wow.
So I have a note here that says, okay, here's something I want to point out. There's a really cool use of color before and after the second splash page. The second splash page is 14. And we should probably talk about this splash page because it's really unusual in the sort of pantheon of G.I. Joe art. But I just want to point out that the 2 panels before it, at the end of page 13, the yellow green is literal and physical. This is the color of the gas. And then the 2 panels after the splash page, so the beginning of page 15, the yellow and green is now more emotional. Like, yes, there's still gas on that first panel where he's holding the syringe. Oh, hey, look, another prop that sort of came out of nowhere. But the yellow and green here, I think, is reflecting the mental state of him still hallucinating. Because notice how on panel 3, when the camera pulls back, and I'm assuming like 30 seconds or 10 minutes have gone by for the antidote to work its way through his system, all that yellow green is gone, and we're back to the normal yellow and orange of fire and smoke. And so this is, I don't think anyone necessarily, I don't think color artist Jason Wordie necessarily said, I'm treating the green literally for these 2 panels and emotionally for these other 2 panels. Maybe, if so, that's awesome. But I do think a really thoughtful writer and color artist having so many skills in their skill set will just make this kind of decision.
I just echo that. I think that's a great use of color. It's almost like there's that green, that intense green. It's the threat of this gas and what's going to do. Then injection, that green is gone. That threat is past. We can sort of move on. I really like that.
Sorry, do you want to talk about the splash?
The splash is interesting because it's a splash. We don't get quite so many splashes in G.I. Joe. Duke is sort of pulling this like really sort of wild, distorted kind of expression on his face. His sort of eyes are, dilated like super tiny and arms out, red, bombs dropping like an atomic bomb in the background. And as well, they sort of go like super simple on a lot of the design elements or visual components of this that you're getting hints of falling bombs and planes, potentially dropping them. And the planes, they're literally, 4 or 5 lines of a cross drawn with another one on the back to kind of indicate the tail of it. And this interesting, composed Cobra commander at the bottom pointing, Cobra needs you, whatever, with Duke mirrored in the mask, having a real wig out. It's an interesting page and sort of is quite it's very, very visually striking, and whether you like it or not, it's a bit like, crikey.
I think the closest comparison, because I don't know that we've had in Real American Hero comics characters hallucinating. And I don't know that we've ever had sort of a nightmare POV panel or two or page where like we see what someone is sort of dreaming or hallucinating. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this.
Maybe here or there.
Okay, I think
the Joes, when they in an early issue when they were captive in the basement of Springfield and they had that water and they were hallucinating that he was a turtle. Was it Zap?
Okay.
Thought he was a turtle on his back, and Scarlet was thinking that she had claw fingers and that kind of thing.
I was gonna say,
but, yeah, it's unusual.
I was gonna say, I forget if it's issue like 88. It's one of the Tony Salmon's fill-in issues when Clutch is in the Braithwaite scanner, and there's like a half-page splash of just his head, and he's screaming, and there's all this Kirby crackle around. And the Dreadnoks are like giggling on the rest of the page because they're going into his memories and trashing it. And he's like, no, like, let me out, leave me alone. And it, yes. Okay. So this is a cool and weird page. Speaking of green and yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We should probably spell out that this character that Duke is trying to track down at the beginning of the story, Duke has a pair of dog tags in his hand. And there's this memory panel of this guy with long hair and a headband. And so this must be Amos Silverheels. And so Duke is, so when you said, when you read the official description of this issue, I thought it gave away too much. And all I know is that Duke is trying to find this guy, find information about him, return his dog tags to him, or return his dog tags to someone connected to him. And there's this indication on that second page when Duke looks down at the dog tags, you see the dog tags in his hand, and then you have this effectively black and white panel where Silverheels is like laughing in a memory, and like because it's black and white,
or a photo.
Exactly, because it's black and white, you think, well, maybe it's a photo, and then cropped on the left side is probably Duke, right? So these two guys know each other.
Yeah, so you think from that establishing page, this is a guy that Duke knows. There's from his past. Maybe there's a photo of them having served together. He's got his dog tags. If he's got his dog tags, does that mean he's maybe dead? So is he looking for revenge, or is he looking to rescue him? But you know, there's some connection, and this mission involves this character somehow.
So when Duke gets to the lab, this little building that hasn't been destroyed, and he goes in and he sees all of these, he sees a couple photos like pinned on the wall and some newspaper clippings. And we get this little history of this character from the headlines and the images. This character, Silverheels, had a partner. I don't know if they're married, but let's say wife and a kid. And like one of the photos, it's like they were painting the house. And so the kid's holding a brush and there's some paint on the wall behind them. And they've got paint on their faces. And the kid has got, I think like the Jughead sort of crown hat from Archie Comics. And then this same character, Silverheels, shows up behind Duke and they fight. And it's a visceral, tough fight. There's an entire page of kicking and punching and scrambling. And then Duke takes him out, which, you know, has got to be hard and dramatic. And then is it the second to last page? And then on the second to last page, Duke is standing over the body of this person in the sort of right column of panels on the other side of the page. The quote camera is pulling back on this like black and white photo of Silverheels and Duke and some other characters taking a break in some kind of like combat or training situation where they've all got weapons and there's a little bit of, you know, tree and they're like seated as if like posing for a candid photo. And you sort of wonder, like, is this early G.I. Joe? Is this before G.I. Joe? You know, the other characters don't immediately jump out as like recognizable. No one's wearing like Snake Eyes' visor and you think that's Snake Eyes. There's no like woman with red hair and a crossbow, right? But there's a guy with like a hat and a mustache and long hair. Like, I don't think that's a Joe. And you think, oh no, Duke was friends with this guy. Like they were in combat together or in training together. and then Duke gets away.
And it looks like he gets away in that vehicle, that aircraft vehicle on that final panel, top right. It looks like a sort of a giant drone
From page 1.
But it's not from page 1. It's a different shape. I think this is more like
An extraction.
An extraction vehicle.
Okay.
The closest I could think of or see was the Sigma 6 Dragonhawk, which has kind of got these giant. It's like a VTOL. It's got these kind of giant circular blades on the wings, and then another one on the tail. So I don't know that it matches completely. Probably the closest equivalent. It's not the same drone on page 1.
Okay.
Which was sort of, it's got like, it's more like a sort of recognizable drone shape. It's got kind of 4
little rotor blades,
propellers on the rotor blades on the 4 corners of it, and I think is a smaller size. Whereas this is more like a Skyhawk or something, that sort of shape to it. But there we go.
I've got one final thought. Here's another comparison to the original Silent Interlude. The original Silent Interlude has a character who is inserted, who completes the mission, well, with help from the prisoner, and then they get away. And the moment of them getting away on that vehicle is a big part of it, that final page. And this Duke issue does not need to replicate that or one-up that. But just as a comparison, here's a different take on, okay, here's our main character in this wordless G.I. Joe issue. On the final page, he gets away via an aerial vehicle. And it sort of happens between the panels where did he like jump? Did it like drop a ladder? Did it land and he gets on it? Like, is it piloted and there's actually another Joe there? And those aren't important. I didn't need another page. I don't need Wes Craig to visually explain that. But it is a comparison. I just want to say one last thing that Craig does a couple times in this, including this final page. He'll have a horizontal stretch of environment and divide it into panels, and then let Duke and some other characters move through that space as like good design and choreography. So not the last panel of the entire issue, but the 3 panels before it, we see that little office hut that where the fight took place. So Duke's coming out of it. And then in the next panel, it's sort of just the next stretch of ground and forest. And then in the next panel, Duke has disappeared in the distance in this silhouette in the negative space of the forest. But in the foreground, the sludge vipers are heading from right to left toward that little hut, right? And Wes Craig did it on an earlier page where Duke is getting behind the what were they called? Razor Troopers?
No, Razor Troopers. Yeah, Razor Troopers. Razor Claw is the boss.
The top 3 panels of page 4, same thing, where Duke is on the bottom of the first panel, and then in the second panel, he's now gone all the way around to be behind these 3 guys, and it's the same space, it's the same like stretch of ground with trees in it across all 3 panels. Wes Craig has just divided it into thirds so that the same space can be like one moment in time, the next moment in time, and the next moment in time without like changing his quote camera angle. So fun issue, good issue, not fully up to the great challenge of a both silent and wordless issue, but I would love to see Wes Craig back on G.I. Joe in any capacity. Another one of these in a year. So a fill-in issue written by Hama of the regular book, some covers, back up in a yearbook, you name it. Yeah,
I agree. It was really fun to see Wes Craig on this series when his name was announced. It's an entertaining book. In parts, it looks really visually very striking. The colors and the art complement each other, and it looks very different. The colors are particularly are very bold, a lot of pop to them. So yeah, enjoyed it, but definitely not without its flaws in some of the clarity potentially of some of that storytelling. So I think we are done with Duke. Next week, well, the week after Duke is out, is more G.I. Joe: A Real American Hero from Skybound. It's issue 316 on the 7th of May. So plenty more G.I. Joe to come. And of course, as always, we will cover it as it comes out. So if you want to find us, we are talkingjoe.co.uk on the internet. There's a group on Facebook where we discuss the latest episodes and issues and news. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and more. We're also on Patreon at patreon.com/talkingjoe, where the likes of Richard, Sam, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, Mike, D, Shane V2, and Infinite Entertainment are all getting early access to episodes as well as some exclusive content. Tim, where can people find you when you're not talking to me?
YouTube at Atomic Abe for videos on TV and film, my brick and mortar comic book store, Hub Comics, and my blog, arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. So I think that just leaves us to say one thing, Tim, and that is...
Nobody Beats Talking Joe, an international podcast!
Laters.
I've had a cat in my lap this whole time.